and he's found tied up to a chair in his home, bludgeoned. This was about 10 years ago, and we were approached by a gentleman. He had worked in a dealership, and he had started this business where he was storing cars for people. He had a facility and he was taking care of their cars, and we'd start them up weekly and make sure they were maintained and take them out for driving. And one of his investors obviously was into cars, had one or two, and wanted to expand his collection. So he brought him to us on a particular car. I think it was a Ferrari, an F430 at the time. The guy's credit was good. We did a lease for him. A couple of weeks go by, he wants another car. He wants a Porsche 911. We say, okay, we look everything over, it's good. And over a period of about 1.5 years to 2 years, we wound up doing about 15 cars with this gentleman. And every time we'd get an application, we'd look at it, and I would tell him, I need to see a financial statement, I need to see tax returns, I need to see bank statements. Within an hour, I would have it at my desk. And everything looked great all the time. And we would get enough money down so we were secure in each of the transactions, because as we started having this kind of exposure, we wanted more equity on his part on each deal. So he had a couple of older cars, the 911, a Dino, he had a couple of newer Lamborghinis, a few Ferraris. It was just a wide spec. Anything that attracted his attention, he would say, yeah, let's do that. For a guy like this who didn't have the capital to have a 15-car collection like he had amassed, he was able to do that because he could put down $100,000 on a $500,000 car. And if he bought a car for $200,000, he could put down $40,000 or $50,000. So the cash that he did have went a lot further in helping him put a collection together. And that's one of the things that we offer our clients. And so everything's going along fine. We're 2.5 years into the relationship, and I wake up one day on a Sunday and I open the Sunday Times real estate section, and the whole front page of the real estate section is a big picture of him with an article about him defrauding the co-op that he was the treasurer for, and had been going on for quite a few years. And they hired a forensic accountant, and through that were able to determine that he had stolen from them about $4 million. Rather than have him arrested and go through that process, he convinced them he could pay them back. And he was able to pay them back, so they didn't proceed and press charges. And what he'd been doing with the money is he had started another company, and he was buying depressed properties. He was using their money to buy these properties and collecting the rents on them, and also taking mortgages on these properties. So when this all went down, he needed to raise $4 million rather quickly. He went and satisfied by forging the mortgages on some of the properties, and then went out and took out new mortgages on the same properties. And some properties he did multiple mortgages. And eventually the FBI caught up with him over this. And that's when this article came out. So, they had known about him, but never pressed charges because the co-op board decided just get their money back and let's leave it alone. Well, things started to unravel quickly after the article appeared. Fortunately, the gentleman who had the storage facility had most of the cars there. So we were able to take possession of probably 12 of the 15 cars within the first week. We liquidated each of those cars, and any equity in any particular vehicle was held in an account until we had liquidated everything. So we weren't, giving him back equity on cars and then upside down in others and unable to collect the money. There were 2 or 3 cars we had to do a little chasing for, but for the most part, we were able to get them back from him. And when all was said and done, he actually had some money coming back to him. He authorized us to send that to a woman who had been his secretary at one time. As long as I had it in writing, we can send the money wherever he tells us to. And, we truly dodged a bullet in this situation, mainly because we had taken enough equity and structured the deals correctly, and we knew where the cars were. That's not always the case, but we don't always have 15 cars with somebody. That knowing where the cars were played into our decisions to have that kind of exposure. Before all this happened, I had spent some time with him. He was going to Cavallino, in Florida, and invited me to come with him. And I was going anyway, so I meet him at Westchester Airport, and he's got, a NetJet chair, but it's not just a normal, small plane. It is a 737 Boeing executive jet. So it's he and his wife and myself and the other gentleman who's running the storage facility, the four of us, with 2 stewardesses, a captain and a co-captain, flying down to West Palm Beach. So we take this great ride down to West Palm Beach, where he's got his 100-some-odd-foot yacht sitting right nearby, and we spent some time there, and everything was good. He was leaving there, going to San Francisco. You would never have known that this guy had this scheme going. I don't know if you wouldn't really call it a Ponzi scheme, but that he was defrauding people and forging documents. And so anyway, eventually he winds up getting locked up, and then they let him out on bail, and he's in his home. And the next thing you know, you hear on the news that there's been a murder in this Tony town in Connecticut. And he's found tied up to a chair in his home, bludgeoned. So everybody thought that it was his wife at first, but she was cleared, and it took 2 or 3 years before they found out it was his chauffeur who had done it, who had been, working for him and had been a close friend of his, and eventually it came out and he was indicted and prosecuted for that. And make the story even a little crazier, he had a brother who was very wealthy in his own right, and legitimately wealthy, and who was killed by his wife. Just a crazy, crazy story that we were very fortunate, like I said, to have dodged a bullet. It didn't lose money, actually, came out everything okay.